training I'm particularly excited about because I know a few of you guys have been asking me to do something like this and have just been struggling with your conversations with women. I know a number of you have just trouble talking to women, whether that's, breaking the ice, having issues with, what to say on a date, for example, what to say through your messages, what to say when a conversation feels like it goes dead. How do you keep the conversation going, essentially? So I know a number of you guys struggle with this, either, like I said, breaking the ice or, keeping that conversation going. So a lot of you have actually asked me, what kind of things can I be saying to her? What kind of questions can I ask her? I feel like I'm always maybe asking the same things. I'm bored, things like that. So why should you care about kind of the questions you have or the conversations that you have with women? Well, think about it. How bored do you feel with women who kind of ask you the same questions over and over again? So a lot of conversations I hear going out there, whether it's you guys sending me screenshots of the conversations you're having with women, or just even I remember too, my days of online dating when I was single, and just a lot of conversations being the same, where it's, almost like, hey, how's it going? What are you up to? Even the questions too are really kind of boring and dry. Like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Again, how's your day going? Things like that, right? That gets very boring. That gets very dry quickly. Especially if you are talking to this person, let's say on a daily basis, or even multiple times a week. These conversations get boring, they get very dry. And it's the same thing in reverse when you have women chatting you up or women following up with you, starting a conversation, and it's just, saying like, hey, how's your day going? Hey, what's up? Those are pretty bland questions. They get tiring real quick because I've even personally remember having conversations like that where it was just like hey, how's it going? Well, not too much. How about you? Yeah, not too much here. Just, sitting around watching TV or something, right? The conversation ends pretty quickly. And for a woman too, that's also very boring, and she's not going to really be interested in talking to you, especially if that's a conversation that you keep having a lot with her. That's all you're really texting her, because that's all the conversation. That's probably as far as the conversation's really going to go, right? And you want to, if you're really interested in a woman, you want to keep her interest. You want to have you thinking about her, have her thinking about you, to, keep the conversation going, keep it interesting, keep it engaging, things like that. So, again, going back to what I said, that, if you're bored with women asking you these questions, they're not going to really go anywhere. They feel stale. They feel repetitive. So if you feel this way about women asking you these questions, in turn, you can only imagine how bored they are of those same questions. So if you want to stand out, then you need to be asking interesting questions that are unique, that, some of them go deeper than just surface level. They're fun, they're creative, and they also really allow you to get to know each other, right? On that individual level, especially if you're talking to multiple women, right? We talk about, or I should say, I talk about the beginning stages of dating, and you guys have probably seen this live I did in the group where I talked about the idea of if you should date multiple women versus just one woman at a time. If you haven't seen that live yet, go look it up, go watch it. I'm not going to spoil the answer, but if you are talking, whether you're talking to one woman or multiple women at a time, it's important that you get to know each woman on an individual level. Again, whether you're talking to a single woman or you're talking to multiple women at a time, you want to get to know them on that deeper level. And these questions, are either going to help you to do that, or they're at least going to keep the conversation fun, engaging, different, unique, help you stand out, especially in the beginning stages when women are more than likely talking to other men. So that's something that I always tell you guys out there. Don't assume when you're talking to a woman that you're the only one she's talking to. Always assume that she's talking to other men, right? So you want to make sure you're standing out. You want to be different than the other men she's talking to. And having a unique set of questions in your conversational arsenal will actually catapult your attractiveness in the eyes of every woman that you engage with in conversation. And why is that? Well, because you actually sound interesting. You actually sound like an interesting man to talk to engage with, to, continue having a conversation with, especially compared to all the other men out there who are chatting her up. And when you are an interesting man to a woman, you stand out. She wants to talk to you more. All right, so let's dive into some of the questions you can ask. So like I said, some of these questions I'm going to share are really great questions that you can use to break the ice. So let's say you can use these questions. There's a woman on your online dating and there's a woman you want to message. Some of these questions might be great icebreakers. Some of these questions might be great questions if you've already exchanged a few messages. Maybe you exchanged numbers and you're texting now. Some of these questions will be great for, a date, especially a first date maybe. So there's all sorts of different situations that you can use these questions to help, you to engage more with women, to be also engaging as well, and fun to have a conversation with, but in turn, to not only keep the conversation going with her, because you sound interesting and engaging, but to also increase her attractiveness for you because you're asking questions that really the typical guy is not asking her. Most guys out there, these questions I'm going to share with you guys are questions that most guys are not probably asking her. So that's going to help you stand out. And they're questions that are just so unique. They're different. And I guarantee you will probably have, a woman say to you with one of these questions that, wow, that's an interesting question, or that's unique, or I've never been asked that before. Some of these questions are just that unique. And it's going to help you stand out because they're going to be curious, why you're asking these questions. Why do you want to know the answer? And, it just creates a mystery around yourself too, that you've, asked her such an engaging, unique question as well, that she's really going to associate a lot of attractiveness towards you as well. So jumping into these questions. So one of my favorite questions to ask a woman, I honestly think this is just such a great question. And this is a question that would be really great if you've been talking for a little bit. Maybe you've exchanged numbers and you're texting now versus like on a dating app, or you guys have a Zoom date together, or you're going in person and meeting on a date. These are, in those situations, this is a really great question to ask. And the question is, what are you most passionate about in life? This is an amazing question, and it's one of those questions that I can't think, even when I was single, I don't think I ever had a guy actually ask this question, at least not right away. And it's such a really unique question to ask because I think first of all, majority of us have passions in life. There's things that we get excited about. There's things that we wake up in the morning for and have a smile on our face when we think about. And when we think about our passions, majority of us have one. And if you don't have a passion, all I can say is you got to go out and get one, because we have to have a passion. We have to have, a reason for being alive in that sense, that keeps us waking up each day and getting up out of bed each day, and gets us excited for our day. And for women, when they know you have a passion as well, vice versa, that's also something that's a really attractive quality. But when you're asking a woman this question, how she goes about answering it really tells you a lot about her. Because if she answers this question and says to you, oh, I don't really have a passion, or I don't really know, I don't know, that's something for you. I would view that as personally a red flag. If someone cannot come back and answer that question, it says to you, I don't really have a passion in life. That's something, looking forward when you're thinking about a possible relationship might be tricky, because this could give signs that this woman might be dependent on you for her happiness, for that kind of life purpose, things like that, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with down the line, a woman prioritizing you and vice versa when you're getting to that more committed stage, but you don't want someone to be so dependent on you that they don't have kind of their own passions, they don't have their own interests, hobbies, things like that, things that they get excited about. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Like I said, how she goes about answering that question. So if she answers it in that almost like negative way, in the sense of, I don't really have a passion, or I don't know, things like that, that is something I would look at as maybe a red flag, because we should be well aware. And this goes back to where I talk about like things like self-love and knowing ourselves and being confident in ourselves, and knowing who we are as people and who we are as a person, is those kind of foundational blocks that we need in order to be successful in dating and successful in turn in a relationship. So now, on the other hand, why this is also a really great question is because you could find out something about her, and something that's pretty deep knowledge, right? That goes beyond surface level. When she tells you if she does have a passion and what that passion is, right? It's really gonna tell you a lot about her. So it's a really, really great question. It's not a question I would ask right out the gate. It's not an icebreaker question, but it's something that's good if you've been talking for a bit, if you've exchanged phone numbers and you're texting, you're going on a virtual date or an in-person date. That's a really great time to drop that question. Sorry guys, just grabbing a drink of water here. Another really great question to ask, and this is one, this could be a good icebreaker too, to get to know someone. This is also especially a great one, like I said, if you've been talking for a bit, you're going on a date, either virtual or in person. This is another good one, but this one can also be used as an icebreaker because it's not too heavy, but it also tells you something about them. Well, you might also figure something out in common you have too. So this is also a really great question for someone that also tends to be the adventurous type, outdoorsy, things like that. And you're looking for someone who you're compatible with. But you can use this no matter your personality, but I was just saying it really helps those who have those type of traits. So the question is, describe to me the last crazy adventure you went on. So again, this is going to tell you a bit about her personality more. And this is a really great one because you can get to know her, like someone who's maybe on the quieter side, who isn't really into things like partying, just really globe-trotting, people like that. So this tends to be someone who, answering this question, if they're very introverted, if they like to stay at home. So they probably will say along the lines, I'm not sure. It's been a while, things like that. And kind of like going from there. But if you have someone who is, more outgoing and things like that. So again, it's all depending on the type of person you're looking for, right? Because we all like different types. So this is going to help to tell you a little bit about kind of her type, if she's more, kind of a little bit more the introverted type, or if she's more the extroverted, maybe a little bit more on the wild side, a little bit more adventurous. So it's all depending on what type you are attracted to, what type of woman you want to be with. And neither woman is wrong. It's all depending on your type. But it's a great question, especially if the woman does have a great answer to come back to, because if her answer is something where she describes maybe a recent trip she went on, I know we're not doing too much traveling now, but a recent trip, or maybe a trip she did pre-pandemic, and she can share about that, and it gives you some insight into her. It helps you go a little bit deeper as well. Another really great question, and this is a good one, I think, for, again, you can ask anytime, but I think in particular, this is a really good icebreaker. So we're talking about, there's that woman, online dating, you just, connected with her, maybe you matched with her, and you're looking to somehow break the ice. This is a great icebreaker question because it's a little bit more on the fun side. It's not super, super serious, but again, it's all depending on how she goes about answering it. But this one is either going to be just like that fun one, or you do also get to know her in a way. But it's a fun one. And it's a question that says, that I would say, what would you do tomorrow if tomorrow was your last day? Right? I think it's a really interesting question because, again, a lot of the guys messaging her, you have to think of the perspective from a woman. A lot of the guys messaging her are messaging her things like, hey, how's it going? And on the worst extreme, dick pics. Things like that. Very, very rarely are guys messaging any sort of quality message. And then to top it off, something that's a unique and fun question. It's a really great icebreaker, and depending on how she goes about answering it, it's something that might be able to tell you about her. Or if she, if she goes on the more serious side, it's going to go deeper, that surface level to get to know her. But if she gives a more fun, casual answer, it's something that you can kind of play off that energy as well, because we all like, whether men or women, we all like someone who has that, zest for life, who's a very positive source, who's, fun, funny, kind of that, so play off that, because it can also create banter in that way, and flirty banter especially. So it's a really great icebreaker question in particular. So another really great question, and this is a great question to ask towards the beginning of just getting to know someone. So maybe you've just only exchanged a few messages. This is a really good one for that time. You want to do it before you ask her out on a date. And it'll make sense why once I share the question. It's a really great one, though, once you've exchanged a few messages. So what would you describe as the perfect date for you? This is a great question. In case it's not obvious by the question, this is a great question to ask, because if you're really interested in this girl and you know already you're interested in taking her out on a date, this is dropping some very top secret insider information on how you could win her over. Now, obviously, of course, she might describe a date that's like completely over the top. I don't think anyone's expecting that for a first date, and I'm not even telling you guys to, do necessarily everything that she says. But it's a great, almost like insider tip on her on how to grow attraction, what's going to make her more attracted to you, and the type of date that you could plan to, propel that forward. And it's something maybe you can take one of the ideas she mentions and do that on a first date. Maybe you can go a couple dates and then you can plan that perfect date for her. Whatever the case being, you just now received top secret insider information about her that she just basically gave you the perfect date to win her over, to build attraction, So that's a really, really great question there. Again, you want to ask this question when you've exchanged maybe just a few messages. But you haven't taken her out on a date yet. You're still waiting to take her out on a date and ask her, and still getting to know her. So I think another great question to ask, and this is a question that I think would be appropriate on a date, especially an in-person date. And I'll go into detail why I think in particular an in-person, or maybe a virtual date too, but definitely an in-person date. And this is maybe like second date, I would say second or third date. Great question to ask, which is, if you could go back in time and visit your younger self / you as a child, what would you tell her? So this is a really deep, more serious question, more past surface level, right? This is not something you would want to ask just messaging someone for the first time, or you haven't even gone on a date yet, things like that. It's a deep question when we talk about our childhoods, right? It can be a sensitive area, especially if she, say, did not have the greatest childhood. Now, you're not a mind reader, so you don't necessarily know, but at least through asking this question, you kind of not only get to know like what her childhood was like, you're getting to know her on that deeper level. So that's going to take it, way deeper. And that's why I was saying this is maybe something you want to ask on like that second or third date question, because it can be such a touchy subject, especially for those that did not maybe have a good upbringing or not have a good childhood. It could be a kind of sensitive question. So another great question. So I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place with you guys, but I know so many of you, sorry, this is just side note. I know so many of you guys out there are at different stages in the dating journey. I know some of you are just starting to date again. So you're just starting to talk to women, or, you're at the stage where you're going on multiple dates a week, or you're going on multiple dates with a woman. Whatever stage you're at, this is a training. I'm wanted to share questions that at the end of the day, or well, at the end of this training, that all you guys who are watching this live can at least take some questions to take away with you, that you're going to be finding beneficial no matter where you are at the dating stage. And it's something that it's always good, even if you're early on, it's good to kind of write these questions down anyways as you progress through dating, and going on dates, especially multiple dates with a woman or with women, that it's good to have these, like I said, in your conversational arsenal, to be able to pull up these questions, especially when you're struggling to keep the conversation going, or you don't know what to talk about on a date, for example. So that's why I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I want to provide you guys with questions that you can use at no matter what stage you're at. So another great question. So this is a really great one, that you can ask, either at the beginning, once you've exchanged a few messages, maybe before a date, or you can also ask this on a date as well. But I think this is a really, really key one, and this is one you definitely want to ask fairly early on. And it's, what is your biggest deal breaker in a relationship? I think this is so important to ask this question. Or you could say, what is your biggest deal breakers in a relationship? But anyway, this is so important to ask, because if she lists a deal breaker that you happen to have, you can know fairly quickly that this is probably not going to work out, and it's kind of something that, knowing that information very quickly, that, she's saying something that's a deal breaker that you have, and knowing it's not going to work out, then you can both quickly, move on to your other options. She can move on to talking to other men, and you can move on talking to other women, because it's not going to work out. Versus never asking this question and just going head first towards a relationship, and finding out down the line, oh shoot, I have something that's a deal breaker for her, or she mentions it to you and things like that, and you're more emotionally invested. That's going to be a problem, because it's, when you're more emotionally invested in someone, it's going to be harder for you to end that relationship. It's going to be hurtful. You're going to be dealing with heartache, frustration, things like that. But it's just really going to hurt you in the end. So that's why this is actually a really great question to ask fairly early on, so you can quickly find this information out. Another reason too, and I'm saying this from personal experience, when I was dating, and I would ask this question, is that obviously, of course, what I just shared with you now, I would get to find out if I had any deal breakers or vice versa. But it's also a really great question that, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. But, it's a really great question to not only find out their deal breakers, but, it can also lead into a more serious conversation, talking about likes and dislikes and things like that. So it's a way to kind of open up that conversation really more, to really find out what her type is. What type of man is she looking for, right? And in turn, you can find out too if she's your type as well, really deep down, or if there's any red flags that are coming from her during that time. So that's why it's also a really great question as well. Sorry guys, just getting a drink. Okay. Another really great question, and this is something that if you guys have exchanged a few messages or you want to ask on a date, but and it's something that is going to really tell you a lot more about her. It's that more deeper kind of question beyond surface level. So this question is, what are you most proud of that you have done in life? I think this is such a great question to ask, because I think this tells you so much about a person, and it tells you what I feel like what they prioritize in life as well. That makes this such a really great question, because depending on how she goes about answering it, right? So someone who, for example, really prioritizes, success, and views success in the form of, let's say, wealth. So she might answer, getting my job where I'm making a really great salary is, my proudest achievement, or getting a recent promotion. So that might tell you she's very maybe career oriented. Another thing she could talk about, being very proud of, that she volunteers at Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's a pretty well-known organization, but she's proud of the fact that she gets to be a mentor figure to a child, and she's making a difference in this child's life. So that again tells you kind of what she prioritizes. Or maybe she has the achievement, she had a family member that needed a kidney. I'm just throwing out random examples here, but needed a kidney, and her proudest achievement was being the person that she could give a kidney to save their life. Like, how a woman goes about answering this is really going to tell you not only more about her, and it might be even an engaging story, so right, adds to the conversation, but also in particular tells you an idea of what she probably prioritizes in her life, right? Depending on how she goes about answering that, what subconsciously probably is her priority in life. So there's another question that I want to share with you guys, and this one is more a really fun one, because I know I've been mentioning some more serious ones, and I want to also mention the fun ones that are going to be unique and engaging and keep the conversation going as well. This one's going to be, like I said, a fun one, but it also lets you get to know her. And it's also something that, depending on how she goes about answering this, if you guys were to continue to date and say be in a relationship, it might also give you a possible future gift idea, for like her birthday or Christmas, like a special holiday. But the question is, do you have any secret talents? So this is a really, like I said, it's meant to be a fun, engaging question, but it also does tell you a little bit about herself. And it's, when we're talking about secret talents, it's probably something that she is talented about, but maybe she's shy to share. Maybe it's like almost like a guilty pleasure for her. But having that kind of talent, again, it makes someone unique. It humanizes them. It, really brings them to that real level in that way, and getting to know them better. But knowing kind of a secret talent. So like I said, going back to what I said about, like, it could be something that relates to possibly down the road, a gift idea for her in the future, or to go even further from that, it could be connected to possibly a date idea. So let's say she's secretly talented at singing. So a great date idea for her and you to do together would maybe be to go to a karaoke bar. Maybe have a few drinks to loosen each other up, and, you guys can sing, or you can watch her sing. But that's an example there, right? That it could lead to actually a possible date idea. So again, and because you're touching on something that's really personal to her, right? Because of our talents, they're very personal and unique to each individual. But that, Sorry, guys. I have my neighbors outside. And so, this is something that could be really unique to her, and it could lead to a really great date idea as well, right? So that's something else that I think it makes this a really great question as well. So another really great question that you can ask, and this is something that, once you've exchanged maybe a few messages, but more so leaning towards, I think, a date would be really great. And it connects a little bit to a previous question I mentioned, but this one's still worded differently. But I still think it's a really great question to ask because I think it gives you a lot of insight. Again, this is one that might dive a little bit deeper as well. But asking her what she was like as a kid, was she someone that, maybe was a wild child? Maybe she's kind of almost like the black sheep of the family, that wild child as a kid, that troublemaker. Maybe she got into detention a lot. Maybe she was the type that was the popular one. She's a social outgoing butterfly. Maybe she was really shy. Maybe she, kind of kept to herself. Maybe didn't have a lot of friends. Whatever the case, I think it gives you a really great insight. And something that I didn't touch on in the previous question, but is also really great to share with you guys and why this can be a great question for you guys to ask a woman. But for women, and this is something important for you guys, we are all about the feelings. We are about the emotions, things like that. So when you're asking serious questions that revolve around us getting deep, especially about very personal topics, which talking about your childhood, whether you had a very good childhood or a very bad one, whatever the case, whatever type of childhood she had, it's going to really resonate with her. It's going to bring up feelings. It's going to bring up emotions. It's going to bring up nostalgia. So when you get her feeling that way, when you give her feelings, when you're on a date, for example, that's going to make a more memorable date for her, and in turn, make you more memorable. And if she's going into detail and sharing stories, she's getting very personal and very connected. And that is something, when we get personal with you guys, when we dive deep, when we get, building that connection, that's going to build that attraction to you as well. So that's why this is also a really great question, because we're attaching feelings, emotions, nostalgia to that question. So this other question is one that you can also use as an icebreaker. If you want, you can ask on a date. But this question, and I'll explain why I really like it. So the question is, what's on the top of your bucket list right now? This is a great, great question out of any time in dating history. This is such a great time to ask this question because of what is going on in the world right now. What we're all going through in the world right now, which is the pandemic, right? A lot of us have been going through restrictions, lockdowns, stay-at-home orders. No matter where you are in the world, we've all been, experienced something along those lines. The pandemic has affected us in some sort of way, affected our lives in some sort of way this past, I guess, almost year and a half now at this point. That, we're all very eager to get out, get back to normal, our lives pre-pandemic, to maybe see people if we haven't seen our friends and family in person, or, going on more dates, going on more unique and interesting in-person dates where there are no restrictions, things like that. Again, all depending on where you are in the world. But this is a great question to ask right now. Almost like, what are you most looking forward to? What's at the top of your bucket list right now? So people are building out bucket lists because there's so many things we all want to do when this pandemic is over. So that's a really great question. It's not too heavy, so it's a little bit lighthearted, so you can use that as more an icebreaker. But it's definitely something that's a very engaging topic, very relevant to what's going on. So definitely something that you can be asking her for sure. And another really great question I have for you guys that you want to have in your conversation arsenal. This one in particular, I think, is such an important question. I really think out of any questions I've shared with you guys tonight, this one in particular is a must ask, whether it's looking at to keep the conversation going. I think this is just something you should be asking someone in general. This is more appropriate for, I would say, a first date or, first date at the earliest. But this is something you want to ask pretty fairly early on, which is looking at and asking about her kind of short-term and long-term goals. So you can word this question along the lines of, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? Things like that, talking about where she sees herself either, in the short term, but definitely also in the long term as well. And I think this is a really great question to ask because it's very much worded in a way that's very curious, getting to know someone, not putting expectations, but behind the scenes. Why it's so important to ask is because you want to know what their future plans are, especially if you are looking for that more serious relationship. You want someone who you can get more committed with down the line. It's very important to know what someone's future kind of looks like. What plans do they have for themselves in the future? What goals are they setting, whether in the short term or the long term? How are they, taking steps to achieve those goals? And those kind of things, right? So asking, what their kind of future looks like really is that important question, because when you're thinking of long term, down the line, again, depending on when you ask this question on a date, what date you guys are at, but it's important to know this, that if your futures even really align, because you could have a situation where you're with someone, and this is actually a personal example from a previous relationship, and, it was something that realizing this man that I was with, an ex of mine, that, he really wanted to go, hardcore country living, almost like living off the grid type of future. And that was a little different than what I kind of pictured for my future, especially at that time, what I really wanted. So that's something that, if you're talking to a woman and she's talking about, where does she see herself in the future? She could also tell you too, well, in 5 years time, I'm moving to France, right? I want to move to another country, and that could be something, well, what if you want to stay home? What if you want to stay local? Thinking about your job and things like that. I think it's so important. You don't have to outwardly express these expectations because it might be, too early on, depending when you're asking that question. But I think it's important to at least be aware of that and say, hearing her future plans, knowing, okay, is it really realistic? Like, if things were to continue, right? And I say this because you want to really protect yourself at the end of the day. That, you want to be open to love, but at the same time, if there's ways that you can find out if there's something that's going to essentially be a deal breaker or it's not going to work out, you are going to save yourself so much heartache, so much frustration, the sooner you figure those things out and find out those things and ask the questions. Again, you also want to move at an appropriate place. So that's why I say, like, for this question, for example, I wouldn't ask this as an icebreaker question, but it's something that is appropriate once you're going on a date with someone, or you've been on a few dates, for example, with someone. So, but it's just something that I think is also a really important question to keep in your conversation arsenal. But, so anyways, I just wanted to share with you guys a few questions because, like I said at the beginning, I know a number of you guys really struggle with, at different stages of dating, how to keep a conversation going, how to keep it engaging. I have so much more other examples, but, we would be here for hours on end. But it's something that, I work through, the single men I work with, I work through these things. Like, we analyze conversations. We go through the types of questions you should be asking, depending on what stage you're at, things like that, to help, really improve your dating knowledge, to really improve just your dating skill set altogether. And I thought it was really important to do a training on this because I know there's a number of you guys struggling with talking to women, how to break the ice, what you can say to break the ice, and then in turn, how to keep the conversation going, because a lot of you out there are having your conversations keep dying. And you don't know how to get them back, essentially, how to get a woman interested in you again, how to re-engage her again. So these are just really a handful in that way of questions that you can have in your conversation arsenal. And they're, like I said, going through those questions, depending on what stage you're at, they're appropriate at different stages of the dating process. But I just want to share that with you guys. I hope you took value out of this training. You got some really great examples there, really great scripts of types of questions that you can be asking. Like I said, if you need to review this video, I always post a replay in the group, so you can always watch it again and again if there's something you need to come back to, or something you want to watch again. If you guys have any questions out there, you want to message me about this live training, or you want to message me any dating type of questions, or you want to chat with me more about the idea of, kind of working together one-on-one, doing a more private coaching session where it's just me and you. I'm not talking to the whole group. It's just me and you. We can go in and dive a lot more deeper into, the dating issues you're facing, the frustrations you're going through day to day when it comes to dating and relationships. I would love to chat with you about that. My messages are always open. My inbox is always open. So feel free to shoot me a message if you have any questions, or you do want to explore one-on-one dating. This is just really these trainings in general are such a small sample of what we go through in a one-to-one setting that really just is that kind of tip on the iceberg that you guys really get to see unless you work with me on a one-to-one setting where there's so much more value, there's so much more impact, and you get amazing results in your own personal dating life. So like I said, if you want to chat about that further, my inbox is always open. Feel free to drop me a message. I hope you guys got a lot of value from this training. Like I said, the replay will be available in the group, and I will see you guys in general back in the group. Have a great night, guys. Bye.